Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews, where today we have ourselves a track by an act named Booker Brooks titled Sober. And if we switch over to here, I am pleased to announce that this is a local act that I'm reviewing today. It's not often that I get to review Kiwi musicians, and I'm really happy to be able to do it. Today we've got Booker Brooks, who produced as well as performed and mixed this track, but we've also got Thomas Asbista on drums, Daria Diagileva, apologies for any mispronunciation, on keyboards, and Ruben Gray, Eddie Kajzanowski, Jacob Rubin, and Talaya Sweeney on backing vocals. We're going to listen through this track from start till finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go. It's instantly fascinating with these sort of synthy kind of glitchy parts, you know? The way it goes between the parts of the stereo field. Nice use of filtered percussion there.
Get the fuck out my head. I just need closure. So I gotta tell ya, it's really over. I'm getting sober.
I like the brightness of the vocals as well as the occasional key parts on the left. The falsetto coming into this chorus is welcome too. Great control there on the vocal technique. A little bit of vocal modulation as well. Stylistically, I think that's fine. It's clear that the musician can sing, so you can just mess around, kind of have fun with it. You know, I think that's great. Be creative with it.
We would get high, would hang out with friends. We had nothing to hide, and I got addicted, and we stayed inside. You told me to fix me and everything would be fine. I knew you were lying. You'd always lie, and I wasn't trying to hear.
Fantastic use of the jangling guitar parts on the left side, alongside the fullness of the mix in general. It's great. It's almost like we're relying on the side chaining of the drum kit to have it give it presence, which is an unusual thing. If there's anything at this point, I'm wondering if the drums are sort of present enough in the mix. Because I can tell this is a loud track. You know, this has been pushed, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a loud track. There is still dynamic range to it. I mean, it's so wide, and there's such a beautiful minimalism with some of the parts that have been played, such as the keyboards on the right side. Da-da, you know, that's a really simple, obviously a really simple melody, but it works so well in relation to everything else with the chord progressions and the bass lines and the chord note accent, the groove there. Oh no, it's an eighth note groove on the hi-hat, isn't it? Or is it a right cymbal he's doing? It'll be interesting to see what we do with the rest of the track, you know? It was great to have that little build there with the distorted elements coming into the full vocal quiet chorus. Yeah, great idea.
In the moment of weakness, I came back to you again, back to you again.
Great cooler response between the backing and the main vocals. It's an interesting decision to make, like with the fluttering, the flickering of those. Yeah, I don't know if I'm super fond of the on the vocals there, because I feel like you've already had so much going on. You could literally just have a moment where just the vocals sit. I don't know if you necessarily needed to have them kind of continue to flutter like that. Do you know what I mean? Because it just seems like we're still desperate to have energy there. It's like we're potentially overproduced that. That's it so far. Everything else is dope. I'm really enjoying it. It's just that part there, we could have potentially just brought it down a little bit, made it a little bit more sort of simple, and then come back in with the complexity maybe for a final chorus or something like that. The falsetto harmonies are absolutely wonderful though, they're so pretty. A little extra oomph to the drum kit. Great little shift to groove with that bass. I heard that. Boom, boom, boom. You know, that's fun. When you have that whole note kind of way of expressing that instrument, to switch up the floor and kind of make it disappear for a moment, it's a way of keeping the listener interested. It's unpredictable, you know? I'm not saying that it's constantly like that throughout the whole track, but in those parts you realize there are varying sort of rhythms to the bass playing. Are those wires that he's using? Like, are those brushes that he's using? Is that why there's that kind of tone to it? Oh no, he might be using sticks. I'm not sure why brushes or sticks. I know he's not doing the swishy thing. I know he's not doing that, but yeah, it's just an interesting kind of snare tone to that. This is a tricky one, because this is my conclusion of my review of Booker Brooks with Sober. What do I think this track is about? I think this track is about someone who has struggled with sobriety, and a lot of the first part of the song is talking about how, you know, they're discussing why they're becoming sober, why they're not doing all the drugs or the alcohol, whatever anymore, why they're taking better care of themselves, and how it wasn't benefiting themselves to do those sorts of things. You know, it's like talking about like getting high and all that kind of stuff. And the interlude part, or the later section of the song, discusses how one bad day threw it out again. And I think a lot of people who have experienced addiction will be able to relate to this, where just something just kind of chokes you a little bit, and you just go back to that comfort zone of being dependent on a substance of some kind, you know. So I think this track will be meaningful to a lot of people who have been through addiction, or maybe they'll even help people who aren't addicted understand why people who do have these dependencies go back to it, even though they know they shouldn't, because it's not as easy as just quitting. It takes a lot to get to a point where you can kind of get out of those shackles. I'm proud of Booker Brooks for doing what he can to get out of this. I think it's a brave thing to write a song about, and I think that he sang it really well. You know, the backing vocals were fantastic when they came in, but I think Booker Brooks, with those damn near flawless falsettos in the chorus sections, with the mid-range kind of sort of more conversational tone in the verse parts, was excellent. I liked the melodies that were chosen there. I'm still not entirely sure if we needed to have the flickering in that interlude bit. I'm wondering if that was trying to show the cognitive dissonance there, the kind of moaning but the frustration there, if that was what it was from an emotional standpoint. And if that's the case, it's fine. I'm not saying it was the wrong thing to do. Just to me, it still sounded a little bit busy at that point. So I can kind of understand why it was done. It's not that I think it was the wrong choice. It's just that it would have been nice to have had less at that point, just to really come down from how busy things were in that chorus section, despite the smoothness of it texturally. It's not like we had crazy kind of chord progressions or whatever, or extensions or semitonal kind of like accidentals going on. There wasn't kind of prog jazz kind of stuff going on, any crazy stuff. But yeah, that's it basically. Aside from the kind of the choppiness of the vocals and the interlude and me not sort of like necessarily vibing with that, I think that he's clearly got good control of his head and chest voice. Very pleasant vocalist to listen to, very gentle. I think that people who like this type of music will be able to kindle themselves to this. And it's a fantastic introduction to who Booker Brooks is as a vocalist, as well as a musician and as a person. The track, 4 minutes 42, that was time well spent. I'm happy with the way that real estate was used. Usually I prefer tracks to be within that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, because that's usually the amount of time that your average new listener might put into a track, even if it sounds amazing. It's just that for some people, or like the attention deficit thing is real. A lot of people want their kind of dopamine hits in smaller form factors. So doing a 4 minute 42 track it can be a tricky thing, but I think we managed to pull it off here. There was lots of range to the different instrumental parts here, alongside not just playing the instruments, but we also had effects and modulation put on them and stuff like that. We kind of chopped them up a little bit, made some stuff flicker, moved stuff around automated it around the stereo field, and we did stack the frequency spectrum well with different instruments. Like I liked the sound of the guitar parts. I think they were really pretty. The synth parts that came in as well, kind of like the mild distortion and kind of grittiness and the ambiguity that was present by those initial elements was welcome. I think that was fantastic. The bass line, the way it explored that lower end there, but still kept alongside those root notes when it needed to, was good. The keyboard parts, the minimalism there was fantastic. I like how we didn't overplay that. We played according to what was needed for the track. Yeah, I think that as an aesthetic, as a kind of, it was well done. I think that the theme itself, with the mild extensions that happened occasionally within the harmonies, showing an emotional kind of a complexity to the situation with how we felt about it and how we thought about it, that kind of pull and push and pull kind of thing. I think it was great. It matched with the lyrics well and the vocal performance well, and it allowed a lot of room for the vocals to be present in the mix. I'm not sure about the drums. The drums, to me, they were played well, and I like the grooves that were there. I'm just wondering, because I'm going to try to listen to this through like headphones and speakers and stuff like that, just to confirm. But it sounds like those drums are just a little bit too tight to the rest of the mix. And I know that we sidechained them to kind of get through. We probably wanted a really full-sounding mix. Maybe it was meant to just be huge. I know we had stuff really widely panned there in the stereo field. We were very conscious of sound design in this. And I think that's fine, but the drums just sounded a little bit tight for me in there. It could just be these headphones. I'll check in other speakers. So I'm 50-50 on that. I'm also not sure if having the drums louder would have necessarily benefited it. Like, I'm not talking bombastic 80s kick and snare ones with gated snares or anything like that, but at the same time, it just seemed like they were a little bit too tight. And as if it was, I'm not sure, like with the way that we did the drums here, I'm not sure if we couldn't have just used hand drums or something like that as opposed to a drum kit, in the sense that it had a similar kind of level of input into it from like an actual dynamic perspective. But that's okay. When the music did go away and we had those buzz rolls and everything like that, it sounded dope. I really enjoyed it. So I think it was just how the other elements in the mix were sort of, how they were interacting with the drum kit that made it kind of like that. And that's more of a studio post-production thing, which again, I don't think it's badly done. I'm just commenting that the drums sounded like they were quite close there, and I'm not sure if that was as intentional as it, I'm sure it was intentional. Anyways, moving on from that. The theme, I think, matched, the musical theme overall matched it. I liked how the interlude had that point of like things going down regardless of how I didn't feel like they went down enough, of having the moment where there's that point of weakness where they go back to it, that kind of being alone and kind of crying out, etc. The sadness for that. And then we go back into that cycle of the chorus of talking about the sobriety and the need for it and everything like that. And yeah, that's basically the track. Like but the studio recording, the production, recording, mixing, mastering, was well done. I'm very happy with the way the vocals were recorded. There was bits of modulation occasionally, but they were filled and EQ'd and recorded well regardless. They sounded appropriate for the mix, and the backing vocals on the sides, whether they're on 100% or 50 of the stereo field, they were each done tremendously, and I'm really glad with how full they are. Lovely, vivacious and charismatic, and nice and bright and cheery to listen to despite the subject matter. The guitars, bass, drums, the keys, etc. had their own position in the stereo field. The drums were sort of panned more appropriately, like stereotypically, traditionally. The keyboards on the right, some like extra parts of the guitar on the other side, little sort of other synth bits as well. I like the stereo panning decisions of like the intro synths and how it kind of went from backwards to forwards, etc. It was really interesting and kind of caught your attention immediately. It was because it was unusual that it was done like that, and I don't have a problem with things being done unusually. I'd rather things be less predictable because it makes them more interesting. The leveling of the elements, well, I've already spoken about the drums, but aside from that, I think it's absolutely fine. Was there dynamic range to this? I think there was the perception of dynamic range because of a minimalism and a lack of layers in some elements, but I'm not sure if this track had as much dynamic range as I'd particularly want. I'm not sure the LUFS meter was saying on this, whether it was 14 or whether it went hotter than that. We could have just put a whole lot of compression on the master chain. It was a loud track. At least it's loud within the software I'm listening to, but that usually renders it to 0 dB, so that's fine. Just to confirm, it's not like doing anything to audio file. It normalizes it within its original dynamic range up to 0, so that it's hitting 0 at the limit. Like, it's not doing anything weird to the track or anything like that. From an audio dynamic range perspective, this is how it would be on Spotify, except that this music B is like louder than Spotify's normal setting, if that makes sense. But yeah, nice and wide in the stereo field with lots of fun stuff happening, the positions of instruments and sort of the vocals kind of spinning around and everything. There were no weird resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum, so the EQing was done well. And yeah, it was nice and loud without pumping. And this is effectively my review of Booker Brooks and their track Sober, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go check out their various social medias, and I'm sure this is on all digital stream platforms as of the 24th of March. This review will be out after then, so it's live now if you want to go check it out on Spotify or whatever. Stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the great stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.